Everyone hear me? And can you hear the music? Is it too loud? Too quiet? Please let me know. Welcome to the new stream setup. Let me pull up everything and give y'all a moment to give me some feedback and make sure we're good to go. I don't really guess I need the headphones, though the music's so pretty. The music that's playing is actually from the live action adaptation of this book that we are starting today, which I'm very excited about. If you've not been to a book reading before or been a while, I used to do book readings quite often, and then other projects just got in the way and I didn't get back to it. And then there was a time where I wasn't sure I was going to continue them because the books actually got official translations in English, which, holy cow, I was so excited about. After some time and consideration and the fact that the books have blown out of the water, totally New York Times bestseller, I don't think anything I do is going to affect the sales of these books, so we're going to continue our readings. But we're going to actually start going along with the official translations. So, Scum Villain and Heaven Official's Blessing are both on pause since we are well and ahead of the translations, the official translations for both of those. I think we are at least in book 2 of both. And this is the first books in each series have been released. So since we haven't started the other book, we're going to start it. This is another book by the same author, Modaozushi, or The Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation by Mosheng Tongshu. Short introduction, for those that don't know, it is a Chinese web novel, which means it was originally published chapter by chapter online, and fans for a long time would translate it and make it accessible to folks from English-speaking countries. The success of these books is so huge that now the company that publishes the Chinese chapters online is trying to set up an official translation avenue for folks to translate and get paid. Apparently it's kind of a mess, but at least the folks in China have noticed that there's an international market, and maybe that'll work out eventually. This is a cultivation novel, as it says in the title. There's a lot of fantasy and genre-specific ideas in here that may come up and confuse you. Feel free to ask if you have an issue. There's actually a very nice explanation for a lot of things in the back here that we're not going to read over because that would just probably be way too much all at once, but we will address when needed. And let's look at this lovely picture of the main characters. This is a BL novel, which means boys love. The boys they love. And it is, oh my god, beautiful. The thing that I love about it too is that the people that did the artwork and did the translations were the fans who were already like officially involved with all this. The fans that had translated it for free. The company sought them out and were like, hey. So that's just, it's really cool seeing people that I've like followed on Twitter just thriving. Here's more art from, oh god, it's so beautiful. Who did the art? Jin Fang did the covers. The bonus illustration was by Moo, M-O-O, who I follow online. They're very great. So, let us continue and begin the story of Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. Feel free to pipe up if you are confused about anything. There will be moments I'll probably stop and say, hey, here's what's up. Chapter 1, Reincarnation. Rejoice! Wei Wuxian is dead. It hadn't been a day since the siege of the burial mound, and the news had already flown across the entire cultivation world as if it had sprouted wings. The speed was only comparable to how fast the flames of war had spread back then, if not faster. Suddenly everyone, whether they were prominent clans or rogue cultivators, was discussing the operation of vanquishment that had been led by the 4 great clans and attended by hundreds of sects, both big and small. Fantastic indeed. Who was the hero who killed the Yiling patriarch? Who else could it be? Ain't it? Okay, we already have to stop. There's going to be a lot of Chinese phrases and terms that aren't translated because they don't really have good equivalents in English. One of them is shidi. Shidi In this universe, there are clans of like martial arts warriors or cultivation warriors, kind of a combo of magic and martial arts. It's like spiritual magic, spirit energy, you know? And so someone in that clan will refer to another member of the clan as being like a brother to them. Not a literal blood brother, but a brother. Shidi would be a little brother. So they're saying his Shidi, his little brother in the martial arts clan, is the one that attacked him. The reason I'm laughing is because since the translation... Ain't it? I just try to imagine ye old Chinese history. Ain't it? Ain't? I can't believe I'm seeing the word ain't in this. Who else could it be? Ain't it his Shidi? The little sect leader Jiang Cheng. The four major clans fronted the attack. The Jiang clan of Yang Meng, the Jin clan of Lan Ling. A lot of this is going to trip me up because I'm out of practice. The Lan clan of Gusu and the Ni clan of Qinghe. Crushing family for the greater good. They destroyed Wei Wuxian's good old lair, the burial mound. I must say, well done. Someone immediately clapped and exclaimed in agreement. That's right, well done. If it wasn't for the Jiang clan of young men who took him in and raised him, then Wei Wuxian would have been a no-name street rat in the countryside, never mind becoming anything else. The former Jiang sect leader raised him like his own son. But look at him, publicly defecting from the clan, making himself an enemy of the world. He's embarrassed the Jiang clan of Young Meng utterly and almost doomed them to the same fate of extermination. What do you call a traitor? I can't believe Jiang Cheng allowed that guy to run amok for so long. If it were me, I would have stabbed him when he first I wouldn't have stabbed... I am reading wrong because my hair is in the way. Let's see, what's... Ancient Chinese Wild West must have been crazy with the native Xiongnu attack the salon. If it were me, I wouldn't have just stabbed him when he first defected. I would have cleaned house. What does a childhood friendship matters when facing people like him? That's not what I heard, though. Didn't Wei Ying's demonic cultivation backfire, causing him to be ripped apart and devoured by the ghosts under his command? I heard he was chewed to pieces while still alive. One thing to keep up with, everybody has two names, because it was tradition at the time, I don't think it really is anymore, to have a public name and a private name. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's a secret, it's just like your official title versus the name that friends call you. So Wei Wuxian is his official title, Wei Ying is what his family and friends would call him. Ha! That's what you call karma. I've wanted to say this for a long time now, but those ghost generals he raised were like a pack of unleashed mad dogs, biting people everywhere, and in the end he got bit to death himself. Well deserved. Be that as it may, if the little Jiang sect leader hadn't been the one to plan the siege based on the Yiling patriarch's weaknesses, the success would have been difficult to guarantee. Don't forget what Wei Wuxian had in his clutches, or how over 3,000 renowned cultivators were all completely annihilated that night. Wasn't it 5,000? 3,000, 5,000, they're all the same. 5,000 is more believable. He really is completely mad. He destroyed the Yin Tiger Tally before he died. I don't like that translation. The Yin Tiger Seal, I think is what they call it in the show. It's like a medallion. It's a magical object. They're calling it a tally, which, I don't know. I guess it's a seal. It's his magic object. So he gets at least some credit for that. If that evil thing was left to cause harm in the world, his sins would only deepen. I'm just going to call it the Yin Tiger Seal, because tally sounds so weird to me. I'm so used to the other. The moment the Yin Tiger Seal was mentioned, there was suddenly silence, as if everyone was wary of something. A moment later, someone sighed. Man, speaking of that Wei Wuxian, he used to be a young master in an extremely affluent and distinguished cultivation sect back in then. It wasn't like he had no accomplishments. He gained great success in his youth. How glorious and unbridled he was. How did he end up on this path? The subject changed, and voices were raised again in heated discussion. It's obvious from this case that the path of cultivation must always follow the righteous way. The demonic path is only glorious in a moment. You think it looks so glamorous? Look where it got him. Death without a corpse, a voice replied forcefully. It's not all because of the cultivation path. At the end of the day, it's still because Wei Wuxian was someone of bad character. He roused the wrath of the heavens and the grudges of men. You know what they say, what goes around comes around, and the heavens are watching. After Wei Wuxian's death, judgment of his character was no longer refutable. The discussions were mostly the same, and any small voice of dissent was immediately squashed. However, gloom was still firmly enveloped in everyone's minds. Although the Yiling patriarch Wei Wuxian had died at the burial mound, the remnants of his soul could not be summoned. Perhaps his soul had also been ripped apart and devoured by millions of ghosts, or perhaps it had escaped. The former would naturally be a joyous occasion for the entire world. However, the Yiling patriarch had the ability to topple the earth and move mountains and seas. At least that's what the legends said. It would be no great task for him to resist soul summoning if he desired it. If his spirit returned in the future, if he took over a body and was reincarnated, then the cultivation world, the entire mortal world in fact, would be cursed to face even greater vengeance, sinking into an endless storm of darkness and blood. And so, when the 120 stone beasts required to seal a mountain were set down at the peak of the burial mound, every major clan began conducting frequent soul-summoning rituals. They strictly monitored for cases of possession, sought far and wide for abnormal occurrences, and heightened their security to the max. In the first year, all was peaceful. In the second year, all was peaceful. In the third year, all was peaceful. In the 13th year, all was still peaceful. Thus, more and more people finally came to believe that perhaps Wei Wuxian had not been that amazing after all. Maybe he really had perished. Even though he had once turned the world upside down, there had at last come a day when he was the one overturned. No one could be worshipped on the divine altar forever. Legends were merely legends. That's chapter 1. We'll explain a few things, just in case this is really new to folks. They talk about cultivation and the righteous path versus the dark path, the demonic path. A good way to think of it is Jedi. Dark side, light side. Jedi actually took influence from Taoism in China and this stuff. You know, this is basically pre-Jedi. And he went dark side. And so all the different clans, which there's different cities that each have their own kind of cultivation clans, which are like magic monk warriors, came together to defeat him. And some people say, oh, it was his adopted brother who finally killed him. And some other people say it sounds like his dark magic turned and killed him himself. But nobody's sure. And nobody can bring his spirit back to trap it and make sure that he's destroyed forever. So everybody's worried, is he going to come back? Well, 13 years pass and nothing's happened, so I guess we'll see. Chapter 2, The Intractable. Wei Wuxian had only just opened his eyes when someone kicked him. A voice thundered in his ears, "Playing dead!" He almost coughed up blood from the kick. His head hit the ground, and when his face turned up, he thought hazily, "You've got nerve daring to kick me, the patriarch." Wei Wuxian had already lost count of the number of years it'd been since he last heard a live person speak. Never mind such awful caterwauling. He was dizzy, and the cracked voice of a young man was rattling between his ears. Think for a moment whose land you're living on, whose rice you're eating, and whose money you're spending. So what if I took a few things of yours? They should have been mine in the first place. Soon after, there was the clamoring noise of chests and cabinets alike being ransacked. It was a good moment before Wei Wuxian's eyes could focus. A dim ceiling came into view, as did an unfortunate-looking face with a greedy glare. That face was spraying spittle all over him. "And you dare go tattle on me? You think I'm actually afraid of you tattling? Do you actually think anyone in this house would take your side?" Two large men, who looked like servants, came over. "Young master, everything's smashed." "So fast?" the quacking youth questioned. "There wasn't much stuff in this broken shack anyway," the servant replied. The quacking youth was extremely pleased. He turned to Wei Wuxian, pointing so hard at the man that he was practically jabbing his finger up his nose and into his brain. "Go on and tell on me, I dare you. Who are you playing dead for?" As if anyone would actually give a crap about all this junk and waste I've smashed everything. Let's see what else you've got to go tattle on me with. You think you're all that just because you went to a cultivation sect for a few years? Well, didn't you get kicked out like a stray dog anyway? Presently half dead, Wei Wuxian thought to himself, it's not pretend. I've actually been dead for many years. Who was this? Where was this? When had he ever done something like forcibly possess the body of another? After having kicked the man, ransacked the house, and spent his temper, the quacking youth strutted out the door along with his servants, slamming the door behind him. He ordered in a loud voice, "Keep proper watch. Don't let him come out to embarrass people." The servants outside the door all heeded. Once the man had gone, silence settled both inside and out of the house. Wei Wuxian wanted to sit up, but his limbs would not obey him, so he lay back down and flipped over. His head continued to spin as he looked at his strange surroundings and the mess on the floor. Next to him was a copper mirror that had been tossed onto the ground, and Wei Wuxian snatched it up. A dreadfully pale face appeared in the mirror. 2 large blots of red were smeared unevenly on each cheek, as if he were to stick out a long and vividly red tongue, then he'd be the very picture of a hanged ghost. Let me explain what that is. And take off this jacket, because I am now hot. A hanged ghost is like a kind of supernatural ghost spirit. Basically, the body he's in is wearing makeup like he is a ghost. He's made himself up with some powder, kind of pale face, and then red cheeks. You can Google, and it should have some images similar. Hang ghost Wei Wuxian. Wei Wuxian tossed the mirror aside, a little disgusted. He wiped his face and found his hands smeared with white powder. Fortunately, it wasn't that his body had been born strange, but rather the penchant of the previous owner, a full-grown man with a face heavily caked in makeup and sloppily applied at that. This shocked some energy back into Wei Wuxian, who was finally able to sit up. Only then did he notice the circle of a spell array beneath him. The array was scarlet and crooked, seemingly hand-drawn using blood as the medium. It was still damp, emitting a metallic stench. There were warped and crazed spells drawn within the array that had been somewhat smudged by his body, but the remaining shapes and characters were gruesome in their evil intent. Wei Wuxian had been called by titles such as the Supreme Evil Lord, the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, and whatnot for years, so naturally he was very familiar with obviously devious arrays such as these. It wasn't that he had robbed anyone of their body, he had been offered one. The nature of this sacrificial ritual was a kind of curse. The caster was to harm themselves with a weapon, making cuts on their body and using their own blood to draw the array and write the spells within. They would then sit in the center of the circle and give up their mortal body to evil spirits, using the annihilation of their soul as the price to summon a nefarious, malicious ghost. This was all done in order to request the fulfillment of a wish. Thus, it was the opposite of possession. While both were forbidden magics of ill repute, the difference was that the former was much less popular than the latter. After all, few wishes were so strongly desired to make someone willingly sacrifice everything they had. This was why the technique had been nearly lost after centuries of disuse. The examples recorded in ancient books had only a handful of cases that were backed by reliable evidence, and every single one of them had been for revenge. Every malicious ghost summoned by the ritual had fulfilled the caster's wishes perfectly, in cruel and bloody ways. Wei Wuxian refused to accept this. Since when was he categorized as a nefarious, malicious ghost? While he'd had a fairly poor reputation and died an extremely tragic death, he didn't haunt the living, for one, and he'd never sought vengeance, for two. He could swear there was not a single wandering ghost in the world who was more decent and honest than he. But the tough thing was, the sacrificial ritual followed the will of the caster first and foremost. So it didn't matter how much he objected. He was already inside the body, which was a silent acknowledgement that both parties had formed a contract. He had to fulfill the wish of the caster, or the curse would rebound, destroying the possessor's primordial spirit and extinguishing it forever. Wei Wuxian yanked his sash loose and raised his arms to inspect them. Sure enough, both of his wrists had been slashed with a sharp tool, leaving them covered in crisscrossing lacerations. The bleeding had already stopped, but Wei Wuxian knew these were not normal injuries. If he didn't fulfill the caster's wish, then these wounds would be unable to heal, and they would worsen the longer this dragged on. If the deadline for fulfillment was missed, then he who had accepted this vessel would be ripped apart in both body and soul alike. There's actually pictures in the book, and I should have thought to put them in the stream. I'll do that next time, but there's some lovely drawings of the scene where he wakes up in the middle of the array. He triple-checked that there was no mistake and cried, "This is ridiculous!" mentally 10 times before finally rising to his feet with difficulty, supporting himself against the wall. This house certainly was big, but it was empty and shabby. The bedding was emitting a sour smell. Who knew how many days had gone by since it was last changed? There was a bamboo basket for trash in the corner that had been kicked over earlier, and both trash and waste paper were strewn across the floor. Wei Wuxian noticed there seemed to be ink marks on the crumpled papers, so he picked up one in passing. He opened it to take a look, and sure enough, it was covered in words. He quickly went around to collect all the balls of paper. These were probably written by the owner of this body to vent his frustrations. Some of the sentences were incoherent and disordered, but the anxiety and nervousness were abundantly clear. Wei Wuxian patiently examined each sheet, and the more he looked, the more he felt something was amiss. Bob or Batman? That's Bob. Hey, BB. You're so handsome. Batman is very small. They're so small they can't wander the house by themselves yet because they will get behind the fridge or lost and... Anyway, so much stress. We got a playpen for them. Right now they're sleeping in my room. But at the end of the stream I can go get them and we can say hello. Through some guesswork, he figured out a few things. First, the owner of this body was named Mo Xuanyu. I think it's Xuan. X is like a SH sound. There's actually a thing in the back that helps you pronounce everything. So I'm going to check this one. Aha. Where's the... I thought there was a... Where's the part that says how to say stuff? I know the other book had a pronunciation guide. Does this one not have one? Oh no. Or maybe I just can't find it. Name guide. Okay, that's not pronunciation. Here we go. Pronunciation guide. Oh, it's only the main characters. Oh no. Okay, I'm pretty sure this is Xuanyu. Mo Xuanyu, and this place was called the Mo Estate. I should probably also say that last names go first. You probably know that, but just a reminder. Mo Xuanyu's grandfather on his mother's side was from a rich family in the area. The family wasn't large, and the man was not fated for a son. After years of trying, he still only had 2 daughters. The name of the second daughter wasn't mentioned, but either way, the eldest daughter was born of the lawful wife. Thus, they were looking for a husband to marry into the family name. Although the second daughter was exceptional in appearance, she was born of a servant, which was why the Mo family had originally planned to marry her out without giving much thought to the groom. Who would have thought she was fated for a fortuitous encounter? When she was 16, the head of a prominent clan was passing by and fell in love with her at first sight. The two made the Mo Manor the site of their rendezvous, and a year later, the second daughter gave birth to a son, Mo Xuanyu. The inhabitants of the Mo estate would normally have held such an event in contempt, but people at the time worshipped cultivators. In the eyes of the mundane folk, cultivation clans that pursued immortality were loved by the heavens, mysterious and noble. Furthermore, the prominent clan leader would financially support the new branch family of his every so often. So naturally, these circumstances were special. Not only did the Mo family consider it an honor, but others were extremely envious too. Hey. Hello. However, the good days did not last. The wandering clan leader was only hungry for the novelty of fresh meat, and he was over it after 2 years, coming to visit less and less frequently. After Mo Xuanyu turned 4, the man never appeared again. In those passing years, the Mo estate's opinion changed again. The contempt and mockery returned, now with the added disdain and pity. Second Lady Mo refused to accept this, believing firmly that the prominent clan leader would not turn a blind eye to his own son. And sure enough, when Mo Xuanyu turned 14, the clan leader sent over a grand party to officially take him back. Second Lady Mo's head was held high again. Although she could not go with them, this event swept away all the grievances she had. Feeling proud and elevated, she proclaimed proudly to everyone she saw that her son would definitely become the leader of a cultivation sect in the future, rise to the top and bring glory to the ancestors. Thus, the people of the Mo estate changed their opinion for a 3rd time. However, Mo Xuanyu was driven out before he managed to cultivate a claim and succeed his father, and driven out in the most shameful way. Mo Xuanyu was a cut sleeve, a male homosexual, and he was so audacious as to harass his fellow peers. Sidebar here. Themes of homosexuality are obviously going to be part of this book, more so than the other books that this author writes. Kind of it deals with some of the historical elements there. Cut sleeve is a term in China for a gay man, because of an ancient legend of an emperor who was sleeping with his male lover who didn't want to wake him up, so he cut the sleeve off of his kimono, or not, it wouldn't be called a kimono. He cut his sleeve off so that he could leave without waking his lover, and so that's now the term for a gay person. And so Mo Xuanyu was harassed for being a homosexual. There's more to the story, of course, but that's what the paper, that's the impression that Wei Wuxian gets. With this scandal exposed, and the fact that he possessed only average talent and no real achievement in cultivation, the sect had no reason to keep him. Adding frost to snow, something had upset Mo Xuanyu. When he returned home, it was as a madman. His mental state had been upended, as if he had been scared silly. Having read to this point, Wei Wuxian's brow twitched a couple times. The cut sleeve matter aside, the man was a lunatic. No wonder he'd smeared enough powder on his face to look like a hanged ghost. No wonder no one thought it strange there was such a large bloody spell array on the ground. Mo Xuanyu could probably smear blood all over the house, from the floor tiles up the walls and to the ceiling, and no one would think it weird. Everyone knew he was crazy. After Mo Xuanyu returned home, he was bombarded with ridicule. This time, it seemed, the situation was unsalvageable. Unable to take this blow, Second Lady Mo was choked to death by her own unappeased outrage. Choked to death, she passed away. It doesn't literally mean she like, hey, Liz. At this time, Mo Xuanyu's grandfather had already passed, and the one managing the household was First Lady Mo. This Madame Mo had never been able to stand her little sister, and she scorned that sister's bastard son. She had a single son herself by the name of Mo Z's are hard. Shi Yuan, I believe it is. Mo Shi Yuan. I am going to struggle with this. The one who had just ransacked Mo Xuanyu's house. When Mo Xuanyu first left with such impressive fanfare, First Lady Mo had felt they now possessed something of a family tie to a prominent cultivation sect, and hoped the cultivator and envoys would bring Mo Shi Yuan with them. Of course, she had been rejected, or rather, ignored. Duh, this wasn't like selling cabbages in the markets, buy one, get one free. Who knew where this family got its confidence? But they all possessed a bizarre idea. They firmly believed that why is this so hard? Si Yuan had potential, that he had talent, and that if he were the one who'd gone with the cultivators, then he would have been recognized for his worth for sure, unlike his failure of a cousin. Although Mo Shi Yuan had been young when Mo Xuanyu left, he had been repeatedly indoctrinated to believe this nonsense without a doubt. Thus, he caught Mo Xuanyu every other day to humiliate him, cursing him for having robbed him of his path to cultivation. Yet he remained enamored with the talismans, the pills, the little spiritual devices that had been brought back from the cultivation sect, and would take them all for himself, breaking them as he willed. While Mo Xuanyu was often in the throes of madness, he knew when he was being humiliated. He tried his best to endure it time and time again, but Mo Shiyuan's behavior only worsened, practically emptying the entire house. At last, Mo Xuanyu had had enough. He finally stammered a complaint to his aunt and uncle, which was why Mo Shiyuan had come knocking today looking for trouble. The words on the paper were tiny and cramped. Wei Wuxian's eyes were sore from reading all this, and he thought to himself, what kind of hellish life was he fucking living? No wonder Mo Xuanyu had preferred to end it, offering his body to summon malicious ghosts and avenge himself. After his eyes started feeling better, it became his head's turn to ache. Technically, the caster of the array had to mentally recite their wish. As the evil spirit was summoned, as the evil spirit summoned, referring to Wei Wuxian should have been able to hear the details of his request. However, this forbidden magic had probably been copied secretly off a book with missing pages. It was incomplete, and Mo Xuanyu had missed that step. Although Wei Wuxian could guess he most likely sought vengeance against the Mo family. But how exactly did he want it done? To what extent? Take back what was taken? Beat up the family? Or wipe them out entirely? It was most likely wiping out the family, huh? After all, anyone who had been in the cultivation world would know the words most often used to describe Wei Wuxian. Treacherous, mad. Was there anyone who better fit the description of fiendish? Since the man had dared to summon him by name, his wish was definitely not something easily granted. Wei Wuxian said helplessly, "You've got the wrong person." At first, he wanted to wash his face and gaze with reverence upon the dead countenance that had once belonged to its former owner. However, there was no water inside the house, not even drinking water. What's more, Wei Wuxian figured the only container around was for lavatory purposes and not washing up. He tried pushing the door, but it was barred from the outside, probably to prevent him from running amok. There was not a single thing that could allow him the slightest bit of joy in being reincarnated. He might as well meditate for a while and get used to the new body. An entire day passed this way. When he opened his eyes once more, there was sunlight seeping into the house through the cracks of the window. Although he could get up and walk, his head was still spinning, and it didn't appear to be getting better. Wei Wuxian was puzzled. This Mo Xuanyu's cultivated power is so minuscule it might be completely overlooked. There's no reason why I can't manipulate this body, so why is it so difficult to use? It wasn't until a strange sound from his stomach that he realized it had nothing to do with spiritual power. It was simply that this body, not trained for fasting, was hungry. If he delayed seeking food any longer, he might become the first malicious ghost in history to die of hunger immediately after being summoned. Wei Wuxian took a deep breath and raised his foot. But just as he was about to kick the door open, there was suddenly the sound of footfalls on the other side drawing near. Someone gave the door a kick, which was followed by an annoyed call. "Meal time!" Speaking of annoyed calls, while those were the words, it didn't appear the door was going to open at all. Wei Wuxian looked down just in time to see a small bowl be heavily set down before a small slat at the bottom of the door. The servant outside then added, "Hurry up! What's the holdup? Put the bowl out when you're done." The slat was smaller than a dog flap, not large enough to allow people to go in and out, but bowls could be passed through. There were 2 dishes and 1 bowl of rice that looked awfully disgusting. Wei Wuxian bitterly stirred the chopsticks that were stabbed into the rice. The Yingling patriarch had returned to life, only to be kicked down and yelled at. The first meal to welcome him back was cold leftovers. Who would believe him if he told them? What had happened to his bloody reign, his absolute massacres, his unadulterated annihilation of the sects? Truly, out of the mountains, a tiger can be bullied by a dog. In shallow waters, a dragon can be mocked by a shrimp. And a plucked phoenix is lower than a chicken. Stripped of their privileges, the strong will be belittled by the weak. Just then, the voice of the servant outside the door was heard once more, but this time it was a laugh that sounded as if it came from a completely different person. Another explanation. We're going to start using cutesy nicknames. In Chinese, you can add either to the beginning or the end of a name, kind of a small short phrase to make it like a cutesy nickname. One of those is just the letter A. You add that, you say to the front of the name, and that's like a cutesy nickname. So this character's name is Ding, and the other person's going to call him Ding, because that's the cutesy nickname. Ah Ding, come over here. A delicate and frail, feminine voice answered from a distance. Ah Tong, did you come to deliver food for the person in there again? Ah Tong clicked his tongue. Why else would I come to this miserable courtyard? Ah Ding's voice was at the door, much closer now. You only make deliveries once a day, and no one scolds you even if you slack off every now and then, so why are you frowning at being so free? Look at me, so busy with errands I can't even go out to play. Ah Tong complained. It's not like delivering meals is the only thing I do, and you still dare go out right now? There are so many walking corpses roaming about that every household has their doors firmly shut. Wei Wuxian was crouched down by the door, pushing around the contents of the bowl in his hand with 2 chopsticks of different lengths, listening as he ate. Seemed like things hadn't been peaceful here at the Mo estate. Walking corpses, as per the name, were the walking dead, reanimated corpses that were low-level and commonplace. Their eyes were usually glazed, their movements sluggish. They were fairly harmless. Nonetheless, they were enough to terrify average folks, and their putrid smell alone was enough to make one fill a pot with puke. However, to Wei Wuxian, they were the easiest to manipulate and the most obedient of puppets. In fact, it even felt somewhat endearing to suddenly hear about them. I love this. He hears about people are being hounded by zombies, and he's like, aw, zombies. Ah Tong appeared to have winked. You have to take me along if you want to go out so I can protect you. Oh, that's the guy. I got confused for a minute. You have to take me along so I can protect you. Ah Ding cut him off dismissively. You protect me, please. Can you actually fight those creatures off? If I can't fight them off, no one can, Ah Tong grumbled. Ah Ding laughed. How do you know if other people can't fight them off? Let me tell you, delegates from a cultivation sect have already arrived at our Mo Manor today. I hear they're from an incredibly prominent clan. The madam is receiving them in the main hall right this minute. Everyone in town has gathered to watch. They're all so curious. You hear that noise? They might order me around again in a bit. I don't have time to play with you. Wei Wuxian listened intently. Sure enough, there was the faint sound of commotion. After a moment's contemplation, he got up and kicked the bar, locking the door, which broke with a crack. The 2 servants, flirting with each other, screamed in surprise when the door was suddenly flung open. Wei Wuxian tossed the bowl and chopsticks aside as he stalked out, but the sunlight blinded him. The glare also caused a small pinching pain on his skin, so he raised his hands to his brows and closed his eyes for a moment. Ah Tong had screamed louder than Ah Ding a moment ago, but when he looked closer, he realized it was the lunatic everyone could bully. His courage returned. Feeling he must regain the dignity he'd just lost, he jumped over and waved, shooing Wei Wuxian like one would a dog. He yelled, "Get out of here! Shoo! Go back in! What are you doing outside?" Not even beggars or flies could have received more unsightly treatment. This was probably how these servants had treated Mo Shanyu in the past, and they grew ever more impertinent when he didn't retaliate. Wei Wuxian gave Ah Tong a light kick, sending him tumbling, and laughed. Who are you trying to intimidate, huh? With that, he headed east, following the noise. Both the East Hall and the East Courtyard were crowded with people, and just as Wei Wuxian stepped into the yard, he heard a woman whose voice rose louder than the others. We have a junior at home who already has an affinity for cultivation. This must have been Madame Mo, who was trying to build connections with cultivation clans again. Wei Wuxian didn't bother waiting for her to finish before he languidly squeezed through the crowd, entering the main hall. He waved enthusiastically. Here! Here! Over here! In the main seat of the hall sat a middle-aged woman, well-maintained and sumptuously dressed. This was Madame Mo. The one sitting below her was her husband, who had married into the family, and across from him were several white-clad youths with swords on their backs. When a disheveled, unkempt weirdo suddenly emerged from the crowd, conversation came to an abrupt halt. So this would be like an open dining area, and you kneel on the floor to eat, and when they say the husband's below her, there's like she's higher up on a pedestal because she's technically born into the family, has higher status, even though in this case she's female. Since she's connected to the bloodline, she sits higher. All right. However, Wei Wuxian seemed to take no notice of the frozen atmosphere. He said unabashedly, "Who called me just now? The one with an affinity for cultivation, isn't that me?" There was too much powder on his face, and it cracked when he smiled, flaking as it fluttered off. One of the white-clad youths snorted, almost laughing out loud, but he restrained himself when another youth, who appeared to be the leader of the bunch, shot him a disapproving look. Wei Wuxian snuck a glimpse at them and was somewhat taken aback. At first, he had thought an incredibly prominent clan was but the exaggerated praise of an unlearned servant. But the people here really were cultivation disciples worth the name. Who would have thought? Graceful sleeved and light, airily slashed, these youths were exceptionally pleasing to the eyes, transcendent and poised. Judging by their uniforms alone, it was obvious they came from the Lan clan of Gusu. They were disciples with blood ties to the Lan family as well, since every single one of them had a 2-centimeter wide white ribbon patterned with rolling clouds tied around their foreheads. Elegance and righteousness was the motto of the Lan clan of Gusu, and this forehead ribbon symbolized self-restraint. The rolling clouds were the Lan family's insignia, and guest cultivators or sect disciples of outside families affiliated with the prominent clan were only allowed to wear ribbons without the pattern. Wei Wuxian always cringed every time he spotted someone from the Lan family. He'd often complained under his breath in his previous life that their uniforms looked like funeral clothes, so he knew he wasn't mistaken now. The funeral clothes thing, in China you would wear white at a funeral, and so they all wear white all the time, so it looks like they're all going to a funeral. It had been a long time since Madame Mo had seen this nephew of hers, and it took a while before she was able to recover from her shock. After realizing who this heavily powdered person was, she was furious, but she couldn't lose her composure, so she hissed at her husband. "Who let him out? Get him out of here!" Her husband responded with an apologetic smile and got up with a glum look, ready to seize Wei Wuxian. All of a sudden, Wei Wuxian dropped down without warning and latched firmly onto the ground, immovable, no matter how he was pulled or dragged. Not even the servants who were called in to help could do anything. If not for the outsiders who were present, they would have started to kick him already. Madame Mo's face was growing darker and darker, and the husband was drenched in sweat as well. He yelled, "You damn lunatic! If you don't go back right now, be careful or I'll put you in your place." Although everyone from the Mo estate knew there was a young master in the Mo family who'd gone mad, Mo Xuanyu had withdrawn into that gloomy house of his for many years, afraid to see anyone. Now that they saw both his appearance and his actions resembled those of a raging monster, they started to whisper among themselves, excited to watch the spectacle unfold. Wei Wuxian spoke up. "I can go back if you want." He pointed at Mo Shiyuan. "But you have to make him return everything he stole from me first." Mo Shiyuan never thought the lunatic would have the gall. He'd taught the guy a lesson just a day ago, only to have him turn around and expose him here today. His face changed colors as he exclaimed, "You're lying! Since when have I ever stolen anything of yours? Why would I need to steal any of your stuff?" Right, Wei Wuxian agreed. "You didn't steal, you snatched!" Madame Mo could now tell that Mo Xuanyu had obviously come prepared. His mind was perfectly clear, and he was bent on humiliating them. Shocked and livid, she accused him sharply. "You fully intend to wreak havoc today, don't you?" Wei Wuxian looked confused. "He stole my stuff, snatched it. From me, even. Is asking for it all back considered wreaking havoc?" Mo Shiyuan grew agitated, raising his leg to kick Wei Wuxian before Madame Mo could answer. However, one of the sword-carrying, white-clad youths moved his finger slightly, and Mo Shiyuan immediately lost his balance. The kick brushed past Wei Wuxian, missing the mark, and the boy tripped over himself. However, Wei Wuxian still tumbled and rolled as if he'd really been kicked. He even ripped open his robes, revealing on his chest the footprint left behind by Mo Shiyuan's kicks the day before. The villagers of the Mo estate were enjoying the show immensely. Excitement filled the crowd. There was no way Mo Xuanyu could have kicked himself to create a footprint, and no matter what, he was still a member of the family. What a vicious household. The boy hadn't been this crazy when he first returned, so it was probably the family's doing. Either way, it wasn't like they were the ones being beaten, so as long as there was a show to watch, all the better. The spectacle was truly more interesting than the arrival of the cultivators. This all ties so very well into the themes of the story. You'll see more and more. It gets a lot to be about, like, the crowd mentality. With so many eyes watching, the youth couldn't be beaten and he couldn't be kicked out. Madame Mo had no choice but to forcibly smooth the whole debacle over with fury thick in her throat. She said impassively, "What steal? What snatch? Such ugly accusations. We are family. It's nothing but borrowing. Aoyan is your younger brother, so what if he takes a few things of yours? And as an elder brother, will you be this stingy, throwing a childish tantrum and embarrassing yourself over such a small matter? It's not like he wasn't going to return your things." To explain, she's saying they're brothers in the sense of, like, we're family. People that are family, they might refer to each other as brother and sister, but actually they are cousins. So don't be confused, they are cousins, not siblings. The white-clad youths stared at each other in dismay, and one of them almost choked on his tea. The disciples who grew up with the Lan clan of Gusu were raised in refined elegance, so they had probably never encountered such a farce, nor heard such brilliance. Today's events were probably widening their horizons. Wei Wuxian laughed maniacally in his mind and extended his hand. "Give them back, then." Of course, Mo Shiwan couldn't return anything. All the items were long since tossed out or torn apart, and even if he could have returned them, he wouldn't have done so willingly. Red in the face, he cried out in protest. "Mom!" He scowled at her. "Are you going to let him insult me like this?" Madame Mo glowered at him, signaling him to not make this scene any worse than it was. Unexpectedly, Wei Wuxian spoke up again. "While we're on the topic, not only should he not have stolen my stuff, he shouldn't have done so in the middle of the night. Everyone knows I like men. Even if he has no shame, I know not to make myself suspicious." Oh, I love this boy. Chaotic little gremlin. Madame Mo drew in a sharp breath and yelled, "What are you spewing in front of the village folk? How shameless! Aoyan is your little cousin!" When it came to outrageous behavior, Wei Wuxian was an expert. In the past, he'd had to maintain some form of decorum so people couldn't accuse him of having a poor upbringing. But now he was a lunatic anyway, so what did he care about shame? He could go wild and cut loose to his heart's content. He stiffened his neck and said outright, "He knew he was my little cousin, but he didn't observe propriety and keep his distance, so who's the more shameless one here? I don't care if you don't care about your reputation, but I still care about mine. I still gotta find myself a good man!" Mo Shiyuan roared, raising a chair to hurl it Wei Wuxian's way. Seeing he'd finally snapped, Wei Wuxian quickly scrambled up to go hide. The chair broke into pieces upon impact with the ground. The spectators crowding in and out of the East Hall were waiting with unconcealed delight to watch the Mo family be disgraced. But they all quickly dispersed once things got violent, afraid they might be injured. Wei Wuxian ducked towards the youths from the Lan clan, who were completely dumbfounded by what was unfolding, crying as he did so. You see? He's hitting me even though he stole my stuff. How heartless!" Mo Shiyuan chased him over, ready to lunge, but the leader of the youth stopped him. "This, Gongxi, we can talk this out." Gongxi is like a gentleman. It's a polite way of referring to someone. Seeing that the youth intended to protect the lunatic, Madame Mo grew apprehensive. She forced a smile. "This young man here is my younger sister's son. He's a little unstable here. Everyone at the Mo estate knows he's crazy. He always says strange things, so don't take him seriously. Esteemed cultivators, you mustn't." Before she could finish, Wei Wuxian poked his head out from behind the youth. "Who said I can't be taken seriously? From now on, if anyone tries to steal my stuff, I'm gonna chop off an arm for every time they do. Just try me." Mo Shiyuan was held back by his father at first, but when he heard this, his anger flared up again. Wei Wuxian darted out the door like a fish, taunting him with a la 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 as he went. The youth quickly blocked the door right after and changed the topic, assuming a serious face to talk business. Then we will be borrowing your esteemed West Courtyard for tonight. Please remember what I said earlier. Lock all doors and shut all windows tight after dusk. Do not come out for any activities, especially not near the West Courtyard." Madame Mo was shaking with rage, but it wouldn't have been courteous to push the youth aside, despite him blocking her. "Lola, stop barking at people walking." She could only reply, yes, thank you." Mo Shiyuan was in a state of disbelief. "Mom!" He was barking. Lola! Hey, why don't you come here? Lola? Lola, you know Barky. Shut your mouth! Madame Mo cut him off sharply. Can you not wait until we're back inside? Mo Shiyuan had never suffered such a wrong before, nor had he ever been humiliated this way. He'd especially never been scolded by his mother like this. He cried furiously, "That lunatic is dead!" After Wei Wuxian was done letting loose, he went out the main entrance of the manor and strolled around the Mo estate to show his face, scaring numerous passerbys and enjoying himself while he was at it. He began to understand the joy of being a madman, and was even starting to be pleased with the ghost makeup, not wanting to wash it off. It's not like there's water around anyway, so I'll let it be. He fixed his hair and glanced at his wrist. There was no indication the cuts were fading or healing at all, which meant the trifling revenge of venting anger on Mo Xuanyu's behalf was far from enough. He'd tried to humiliate them publicly, hoping that that would be the revenge required by the curse. Fortunately, it wasn't. Lola! Oh yeah, this family always sucked. This family's awful. Did he really have to slaughter the entire Mo family? To be honest, it wouldn't have been anything difficult to do. Wei Wuxian pondered this as he sauntered back to the Mo Manor. As he snuck past the west courtyard with small, quick steps, he noticed the Lan disciples on top of the rooftop and wall eaves, gathered in somber discussion. He snuck back again with those small, quick steps and looked up, watching intently. While the Lan clan of Gusu, or maybe it's Lan, I'm not sure. While the Lan clan of Gusu was a major part of the coalition that had come to besiege him in the past, these juniors hadn't been born at the time, or if they had, they would have only been a few years old, so that event had nothing to do with them. Wei Wuxian stood there and observed, wanting to see how they planned on handling the situation. As he looked on, he suddenly felt something amiss. Why did those black flags being flown on the rooftops and wall eaves look so familiar? The flag was called a spirit attraction flag. If it was stuck on a living person, then it would attract every dark spirit, every vengeful ghost, every fierce corpse, and all such manner of evil to attack said person. Since wearing a flag was akin to becoming a live target, the flag was called a target flag. It could also be stuck on buildings, but said buildings had to have the living within them, and with the range of the target would increase to include all the people within the building. Since yin energy swirled around the area where these flags were planted like a black whirlwind, they were also known as Black Wind Flags. These youths were setting up the flag formation and had told others not to go near, so they had to intend to lure the walking corpses here and capture them all at once. As for why the flags looked familiar, how could they not? The creator of the Spirit Attraction flag was this very Yiling Patriarch! It appeared that despite how the cultivation world had demanded Wei Wuxian's demise, they nevertheless had no qualms about making use of his inventions. One of the disciples on the rooftop noticed him watching and chided him. "Go back, this is not a place where you should be." Though he was being ordered to shoo, it was done with good intentions, and the tone of voice employed was also different from that of the Mo servants. While the youth was off his guard, Wei Wuxian hopped up and plucked a flag. Greatly alarmed, the disciple jumped down the wall to chase after him. "Don't touch that, it's not for you!" Wei Wuxian hollered as he ran, looking completely like a lunatic. His hair flying loose and disheveled, arms waving and legs skipping. "Finders keepers! I want this! Mine!" The disciple quickly caught up with him and grabbed his arm. "Give it back or else I'll hit you!" Wei Wuxian clutched the flag tightly, refusing to let go. The leader of the group that was setting up the formation was all alerted by the commotion and came fluttering down from the eaves. "Jinyi, let it go. Retrieve the flag nicely. There's no need to start a dispute." This one's hard to say too. Shizui, I think. I'm probably wrong. I will have to find a pronunciation guide online. "I didn't hit him for real," Lan Jingyi complained. "Look at him, he's messing up the formation." During their push and pull, Wei Wuxian swiftly finished inspecting the Spirit Attraction flag. The drawn patterns were correct, and none of the spells were missing either. There were no mistakes, so perhaps no mishaps would occur if the flags were used. The only issue was that the person who'd drawn the flag was not very experienced, so the spell would only attract evil and walking corpses within a 2.5 radius at most, but that would be enough. Lan Shizui turned to him with a smile. "Mo Gongzi, it is getting late, and we will be starting to catch walking corpses soon. It is dangerous at night. You'd best hurry back to your chambers." Wei Wuxian sized up this youth. The boy was gentle in disposition, refined and elegant, noble in his bearing with a light grin curving the corners of his lips. This was a good sprout, very worthy of encouragement, and Wei Wuxian mentally gave him a nod of approval. The child had set up the flag formation in a proper and orderly manner, and his upbringing really was quite commendable. Wei Wuxian wondered who among that terrifying group full of uptight sticks in the mud known as the Lan clan had managed to raise such a junior. I love it. If you know, you know. Let's see how much longer we've got. Oh man, these chapters are long. We might have to quit here. Let's see, how long have we been reading? About an hour? Yeah, we're gonna have to quit here, I think, with him just about to get into the action of the evening. I love this book. Slash book series, since now that it's being printed, it's being divided up into 4 books, I think. This book has a lot to do with, like, society and its perception of you. Like, it opens with a crowd of people taking delight in someone's suffering, and it's played for laughs, but thinking about it later, knowing what else happens in the story, it suddenly becomes kind of dark, thinking about how messed up it is and how easy it is for people to fall into that kind of behavior. And on the other side, living his second life, Wei Wuxian has gone from a person that's tried so hard to be approved of by everyone to somebody who doesn't care about anything, about the approval of other people. He does what's right, and it's going to lead to him actually solving some problems where in the past a lot of problems were created sort of by his behavior. It's not to say that he's 100% learned his lesson yet. There's more to learn, but he's kind of evolved a little bit, like, well, now I'm just gonna do me. And it kind of turns out better for him this time, even though there's still lots of struggles yet to come. It is so good. If we keep going at this pace, an hour got us through about, we'll call it 30 pages. And this has about 350. 350, so 10 would be 300, 2 more, so call it 12 weeks. 12 weeks would get us through March, I think. The next book, In Heaven Official's Blessing, comes out in February, and then there's a break for a little bit. So I think we'll end up with a small period of time where we don't have book to read before the next books come out, but this should keep us occupied for a little while we're waiting for the Scum Villain and Heaven Official's Blessing to publish the next editions. So until then, we'll keep reading that, possibly every week. We'll see how much my schedule it gets in the way, what have you. This will be moved to the second channel, where all my other book readings are, so if you've not listened to Heaven Official's Blessing or Scum Villain and you enjoyed this, those are books by the same author, not same universe, but same genre, or similar genre. There's some differences. Very fun, very good. And there's lots of other books over there and other stuff. Check it out. If you like what I do and want to support it, do that. Links are in the description. Going from the drama, I'm pretty sure it's Lan. I think you're right. There's like a H sound. My southern wants to come out and call him Lan. That's the Lan clan. Thank you all for listening. It's been fun getting back into this. Oh, I said I would show you guys kittens. Let me go get kittens, and then we will end the stream. Here are the babies. And Lola is here with us because Lola loves the babies. They are her children. Last night, Alfred here actually escaped and got through the baby gate and upstairs, and the only reason I found out was because Lola noticed and made it upset and got upset about it. It was really funny. These two are sleepy because I just woke them up. Yes, Lola, yes, these are your babies. I know, I know, I know. She's sniffing them like, oh, you see my babies? You see my babies? It's funny. Alfred really wants to play with Lola and gets fierce with her. Batman doesn't want to play, but will let Lola lick her, pick her up, do anything. Just don't play with me. I'm just gonna lay here and you can do whatever you want. You guys wanna play? Alfred loves play. Alfred's very playful. Yeah. You wanna play, Alfred? Say, I don't know, I'm still sleepy. Still sleepy. Oh, bless you, Batman, bless you. Lola, why you gotta bathe the baby? The baby doesn't want that. Oh, yes, hello, yes. Lola loves the babies. Bob is terrified of the babies. Bob is staring at us in his box. He's afraid. And Gandalf's warming up. Gandalf's getting better. Doesn't really want to play, but will be in the same room as them. Will exist near them. I think Gandalf, with time, is going to adjust to them very well. Bob, it may be a while. One of these days, I'll do an actual just kitten stream where I don't just show up for 5 minutes with kittens. We can, like, play with the babies in the playroom. Yeah? Does that sound good? Batman loves this. I don't know why he wants to sit underneath your chin, but he does. Always. Let's get close. You say bye, Batman? Bye, Alfred? You say bye? Say bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.